All right, good evening, everyone. It's Saturday, March 8th, 2025, 11 p.m. Central Standard Time here in Champaign, Illinois. You're watching Co-op for Two, and we're continuing from last night our playthrough of Unsolved Case Files, Sandra Ivey, which is sort of the end of our little science fiction marathon here. Before we get started, just a little bit of bookkeeping. Tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m., we'll be doing our normal Dear Holmes play-by-mail session. I guess daylight savings time is tomorrow? I'm not really sure, but when the clock says it's 1 p.m., that's when that will start. But just to be aware that daylight savings time is happening, I guess. And then on Monday, Jonathan and I will play our 8th session of Seven Citadel, for those of you, and there aren't any, who have been joining us for that. Okay, so Unsolved Case Files, Sandra Ivey, has been a bit of a surprise so far, all pleasant. My experience with the Unsolved Case Files games, I've only played one of them, Harmony Ashcroft. I was a fan of the way it was done, but it was a bit on the easy side, and I just didn't give much notice to the rest of the Unsolved Case File games. There are about 9 of them now. They're not ranked for difficulty, so I sort of assumed, based on the marketing and based on my experience with the first one, that they were all going to be basically easy. But what we've got here with Sandra Ivey is a much higher production quality, much richer elements here. A huge amount of effort went into making this feel realistic, even in this science fiction setting. And the writing has been very good. The story surprised me. I thought this wasn't going to be an interesting story, but it is good. And we got stuck. We got stuck trying to answer our next objective, proving it. And I was also reminded of one of the things I really like about this series is it's asking you to select evidence to prove a point. And at the end of yesterday's session, we spent a good half-hour, and we're stuck. Now, the first question it gave us was kind of easy. So it may just be that we're all sort of on the same groupthink and we're missing something obvious, or it could be that the game is not as well designed as everything else looks, and it's really asking for something that we're not going to be happy about when we get it right. But because the overall experience has been so positive so far, we are really taking our time, slowing down, and trying to be methodical about our attack on the evidence. And I'm really enjoying that. I spent a good chunk overnight thinking about it. I was actually listening to our playthrough last night as I went to sleep to see if I could hear anything else that we might have missed. I did hear a couple things. I made a couple of notes. And I want to hear from the chat what you've been thinking about. But this is a bit of a perplexing case because we don't know who did it. We're a little bit confused about that, but not only don't we know who did it, we don't really know what happened, and we don't know how to answer this very specific question. And because of that, I feel like we're getting pulled in a couple of different directions. Like half of our mind is trying to solve what happened, half of our mind is trying to solve who's our culprit, and then a little piece is being pulled to the very narrow question we're being asked. And I have that narrow question in front of me here. Prove the fire suppression system did not kill Sandra. The fire suppression system, well, let's do a little recap. Then I'm going to check in with the chat. But let's do a quick recap of our case. If you haven't watched yesterday's playthrough, you should stop watching, listen to that, then you can come catch up with this. Sandra Ivey's the CEO of this space company that's built this base floating in space, and there are 5 people up there now, and Sandra Ivey was found dead in the green section of the space station here. She's actually found floating in the science lab. And what happened was that in the control room, there was a mess up charging the batteries. A fire started in the green hub. The automatic fire suppression system kicked in when it detected smoke, and it sucked the oxygen out of the green hub. We think every room in the green hub, a little bit disagreement or confusion there. And then the power went out. They lost comms with the base on Earth. When power came back on, they realized that Sandra Ivey was not accounted for. Mission Base says, we can't get a read on her. We fear the worst. The captain of this whole thing, Amelia Lopez, goes. She sees that, yes, indeed, Sandra Ivey is floating in the science lab dead, which is then locked down. We figured out what caused the battery fire malfunction. It was Hiro Sasuke, who's one of the guests on board, put in the wrong codes to the manual battery charging, and we found out that his instructions for what to do had been tampered with. But we know who was in charge of those instructions. That's Jordan Ivey, the brother of our victim, but we don't know if Jordan is the one that purposefully changed the instructions. We know the instructions were purposely changed. That's what we're calling a sabotage. That caused the battery fire, that caused the fire suppression oxygen, and Sandra Ivey is dead. An autopsy was done. She did die of suffocation, lack of air. But at the start of the objective we opened today, we read this note from our client. He says, you've cracked the case wide open. Your discovery raises several new questions. Why was there a fake version of the battery instructions? Who made it? Who put it there, and why? Then he says, at least some of the mystery is unraveling. It never made sense that Sandra would have stayed in the lab for 15 minutes after the lights went out. The Sandra I know would have gotten to Jordan. So basically they lost power. And the question is, if Sandra Ivey was in the lab when power went out, she would have come running out. She would have said, what's going on? Let me help. And then 15 minutes pass, and then there's the fire and the lockdown of green. So he's saying that doesn't make sense. She obviously would have left the green section if during the blackout. And so she must have been incapacitated in somehow. But actually he goes further. He says, I'm convinced Sandra was already dead when the blackout happened. So he says, why would someone risk their own life sabotaging the station unless they needed to create a distraction? There's no evidence she was bound or locked in the lab, so it's the only explanation that makes sense. I just can't prove it. So he's saying she must have been dead ahead of time because she wasn't locked, she wasn't forced to stay in the lab, so she must have already been dead. That's a fair case. I think that makes sense. Then he's gotten some extra information on the Colonel's mystery. What was the Colonel up to? And we now know from these letters that he was conducting an experiment on mice and stuff. We'll look at that later. Okay, now let's just read his little summary again here. I know in my gut Sandra was already dead when the fire suppression system turned on. Can you prove the fire suppression system wasn't the real culprit like everyone says? Okay, so that's where we're left. Now, there's some confusion on our part about whether... Okay, so we believe that she wasn't killed by the fire suppression system, but we're still a little bit confused about whether the fire suppression system actually did suck out all the oxygen in all of Green Hub. However, I think we should take seriously him saying that she was dead before that. So in that sense, it doesn't matter to us whether the green section had the oxygen stolen out of all of it. I mean, we really fixated a bit last section on whether the evidence was showing that the mice were still alive. They were probably in the green section, which means that the oxygen wasn't removed from the green section. And that was how we were that's how we were sort of fixated on showing that she couldn't have died from asphyxiation when the oxygen was removed, because the oxygen wasn't removed. But really our client is saying, look, that's not relevant because she was already dead. So whether the oxygen got removed or not would have had no bearing because she was already dead. So sort of, I guess that's a little bit confusing. I guess if the oxygen wasn't removed, that still might be the proof that she wasn't killed. But he seems to think that we should be trying to prove that she was killed earlier. Okay, I had some thoughts overnight too, but let's check in with the chat and see if there are any other thoughts first. Okay, my only thought, says Corsican, is that proving that the rats were in the lab would solve our question. I think the picture of the lab isn't showing anything, so I'd like a review on anything to do with the colonel's arrival on the station. Anna says, I think it said they sealed the whole green area, but also the system sucks out the oxygen from where it detects smoke. So I still think the answer is there was no smoke in the lab, hence there was oxygen. Jamie says, the image of the batteries, I was curious if the G1, G2, G3 indicated which part of the green zone they specified, or if they were working all together. Because it was individual G2 as health. I think I can answer that. We're told that there's 3 batteries that rotate, and I think that's all the G1, G2, G3 is. It's just the 3 different batteries that are rotating. Only one is actively powering the entire hub, the entire station, in fact. Or, I don't know if that's true. Maybe not the entire station. But I think, yeah, Jamie says, I think they said one battery powers the whole section, whereas the second battery is charging. Yes, I agree with that. The term suck the oxygen can be misleading. I think they remove all the air and smoke if present, leaving the room in some sort of vacuum. Yes, I think that makes sense. DJ Moneycut says, what's Sandra breath hold time? Could that figure into the proof? Well, we have their physicals, but not for Sandra. Sandra's information is not included with the physicals. I don't know why not. But so we don't know how long she can hold her breath. We don't know her psychological background. None of them can hold their breath 10 minutes, though. So that doesn't really affect us. Okay, let me get my notes. Here are the notes I made last night. Okay, here's the first note I made that was odd. Let me do it this way. So they lose connection with the home base. And when it comes back up, when they have the blackout, when it comes back up, Mission Control says to them, hey, we've lost the connection to Sandra Ivey's pulse monitor, so we're worried about her. Can you go check on her? That's relevant for me because I think it means that before the blackout, she must have been alive and well. Because if she was killed any time before the blackout, Mission Control would have contacted them and said, her pulse just stopped. What's wrong? So that seems significant. I think that narrows down her time of death to somewhere between the blackout and the end of the fire. So she had to have been killed in that window. And we are told that she likes to meditate in the greenhouse, I think. So I think someone could have known that every time around 11 a.m., she would have been in the greenhouse. So someone could have planned her murder. and said, we're going to disrupt the batteries, and known that that was the time to go kill her in the greenhouse, I believe. Yeah, there was full oxygen during the blackout. So that whole window of the blackout, I think someone could have killed her. Now, I think this is the biggest piece that we sort of wrote off. And it comes back to a little theory Anna had. The colonel says he saw movement in the blue tube. And if we look at his incident report, he's very specific. He says, I was in the airlock waiting the whole time, and he points to exactly where he saw movement. He says, let's see, we made a little note so we wouldn't forget. From inside the airlock, I could see faintly through the hatch into the blue sector hub. It was mostly dark other than the emergency strip lighting he's talking about during the blackout. He said, I saw a few flashes of movement when I first got into place. Then a bit more shortly before the evac order was given. Okay, so this is super significant because most of the people, in fact, everyone is in the red hub except for Sandra, who's in the green hub. And Jordan and Sasuke, and Hiro, who are in the blue hub. No one says they went here. No one claims to have taken this path. Jordan and Hiro are here. Jordan never leaves. So he says. Hiro goes here. AJ is meditating or sleeping, and Amelia is in the bathroom here. So Anna was saying in the beginning, like, how is it that Hiro comes back when he gets angry and goes to his room, and Amelia doesn't see him? But Amelia was in the bathroom, which would be private, so she might not have seen him come in. But no one claims to have gone this way. So the question is, who was it that went this way? And I think we've got two real candidates. We've got Jordan or Hiro. Eventually, Amelia goes up to the green hub this way, but not this way. We know she goes this way because she describes talking to AJ and Hiro here and saying, holy cow, what about Sandra? And she rushes through there. So the colonel sees blue early and then late. So that almost sounds like it's Jordan. Like, Hiro leaves and comes back. Did Jordan go and kill her? Kill his own sister? And then come back? Right before he gave the evac orders? Or did Hiro go when he said he was coming back to Red? Did he go and kill her? So that is a huge clue, and I think it points the finger at Jordan and Hiro. It doesn't answer the question we're trying to answer now, though. And maybe we can get our timelines better when we look. He says he sees some activity shortly after I first got into place and a bit more shortly before the evac. So I think we might want to try to pinpoint what those times are, right? We know exactly when he gave the evac order. And we should be able to determine when the Kurt comes into the airlock. So that might help us. Doesn't help us answer our main question for today, though. Okay, where are the rest of my notes? What did I do? All right. What else did I note? All right. Now, was Hiro creating an alibi with his Facebook post? So I want us to entertain the possibility that we discovered sabotage when we found Hiro posting on his social media this image of him holding the sabotaged instructions. My conclusion was then that Jordan must have sabotaged his instructions because Jordan was in charge of this whole thing. Jordan is the one who told him to do it. So, like, I don't think this guy could have known that he was going to be put in charge of battery that day. That was the only day he was. So I assumed that Jordan pre-planned this. So I still think that's the most likely case. But the other thing we should at least entertain is that this guy is so clever. He's figured out how he's going to overload these batteries. He's printed out himself a fake sabotage thing so that he has an excuse that he didn't do it. He can say, you know, I think I may have taken a photo of that. Or let's look at this sheet. And it will prove that I was just following the instructions and someone else sabotaged it. Still seems unlikely to me, but it does make me think that we should at least keep Hero under our considerations. Okay, now a couple of clarifications. We knew the comms log said that Jordan was working on something and why Hero had to work on the battery. And I did find that again, and he does say specifically what he was working on. So here's the little discussion here. Hero said, hey, I had to do the batteries because Jonathan was working on something else. And here is Jordan. Jordan was working on something else. Here's Jordan saying exactly what he was working on. He says, the air mixture in the green sector has been off. I was trying to figure out if it was ... So the question is, was something going wrong in the green sector with the air? That brought us to the mouse stuff. I'm not sure how it relates to the mouse, but at least that now we know what he claims. Now that could be totally made up by Jordan. And then, I mean, we were thinking, like, is this the mouse? But the mice have their own infiltration, so why would they be messing with the air? And there was this whole side story about, do we think Amelia was taking the drugs that the mice have? But when you read the mice thing, it says they're totally locked up. You can't get in it. Even the colonel doesn't have the key. And no one's supposed to know about it. So I don't think anyone could have got into those mice. All right, and then this is just a note that I'm still not sure whether the entire green zone lost oxygen. And just what we read here. The mice don't have their own air. It's absolutely true. The mice need to get air from their surrounding, but we know they survived. So wherever they were didn't lose oxygen, but we're not 100% sure they were in the green zone. And furthermore, they do have their own filtration system, so I'm not sure how they would be messing with green filtration. Marco says, I think we should figure out what the picture of the outside station is representing. So we concluded that this odd photo was just Solomon taking a photo of from the airlock of what looks like the green section. So there's the airlock when he would have taken his shuttle in, and we think he probably took a photo of this area. And that's what we're looking at here. But at this point, there's nothing that jumps out at this. I mean, we know that the colonel, who's kind of suspicious, was out there, but is there writing here? Is anything important about this? To be honest, I can't really see it from this view. But how specific would it have to be for us to be able to draw some conclusion about that? Like, we don't know what it's supposed to look like. So how do we know anything? The things on the side are supposed to be in the middle. I don't understand what that means. So, yeah, I don't know how to make any sense of what we don't know what it's supposed to look like. Do you see like a cut cable? Even if we did, even if we saw a cut cable or clear sabotage, it would not help us. It would not help us answer any questions. So I don't know how to make use of that. Maybe later at some point, but I just don't see how. If someone thinks they know that we got confirmation about where the mice were, I'd like to know, but we don't really have good evidence that the mice are involved in this in any way. This is the photo that screamed out at me like it should be giving us, like, this is the kind of thing you might expect, that this photo would give us the answer. But I can't see how it is. I mean, there are things here. We see the laptop. We see her in her white socks. We thought we might make significance over about that. We looking for the mice. I mean, even if we saw the mice, I'm not sure how that would help us. We looked at the blackboard. It looks like it's talking a little bit about air. Someone's playing hangman. There's her laptop. Looks like here might be saying respiration or something, but it's... Look at her. Let's see. Her hair's not tied up. Her hands are down. What she died of suffocation. So what's the alternate theory of the being killed from from the fire suppression stealing the oxygen out? That someone strangled her, but then you'd see strangulation and broken whatever the bones in the neck. So did she die of lack of oxygen in some other situation? Did someone remove the oxygen from her, this specific room, and kill her? How would we know that? Did someone lock her in? She didn't have her radio. She couldn't call out. Or did someone smother her in her sleep? Surely no one killed her in her room. It would be hard to bring her here. So do we think that someone caused the blackout and then went straight into the lab and killed her? Or she was in the hibernation. Can we prove she was in the hibernation health center here, and someone rigged her oxygen to go off and die in there? But we don't have any proof of that. But I suppose a reasonable proof would be that maybe should still be focused on the mice. Might we be able to show that since the oxygen wasn't removed, well, that's the strange thing, because it seems like other pieces of our evidence are telling us that they would have removed the oxygen from the entire green sector. That's very confusing. That feels like a mistake, like a bad design of the game, that it's so misleading about, so confusing about that. But okay, I suppose you could consider the proof of this to be that the mice didn't die. The mice were in the lab, so she couldn't have died in the lab from that. I guess that's still our best bet. The radio was left in her room. We don't know why. Well, we shouldn't say that a radio was left in her room by her. It's possible someone brought the radio back into her room, but then that would have to be Hero. Right? Because the radio was found in her room later. So she could have actually had it on her at the time, but then you would think she would radio as soon as the blackout occurred. So another little twist of a problem for us is that last night we thought we would settle on the idea that the mice were still alive. And we went to the website to select the piece of evidence that shows that the mice were alive. And we found it wasn't present in this list. And that's because we took these to be two different pieces of evidence. Here's the instructions on the mice, and here is a report that was written about the mice later. And this doesn't seem to be in the evidence list, but I think maybe that's an oversight of the game designers, and maybe we should take this last item called Operation Mighty Mouse Instructions, even though that couldn't be more explicit that it's only talking about this. That title on that web page could not be any more clear that they don't mean to include the research report, the research paper. And yet, we might conclude that these are sort of a pair. If we were really sure that this proves what we care about, then maybe we should be selecting the one that seems to be talking about this. So I guess there are two things that I would like us to clarify. Where were the mice? Can we get clarification that they were indeed in the lab? I think my vague memory is that we do have evidence of that, but I really would like to nail that down because we can't see them in there. It's confusing. And the second thing I would like to try to nail down is the movement in the blue tubes time. Whether that could be Jordan or Hero. And I think we have to accept the fact that the brother could have been jealous of the sister. There's some discussion about, I mean, let's look at his psychological profile. Highly conscientious, brilliant engineer, flustered when the world does not share his compliance to expected outcomes, makes him questionable choice for any mission, prone to make rash decisions, no decision when presented with obstacles. He's got anxiety. And we're told, I think it was the doctor's note that actually lets us know that they didn't want him on this mission. It was only his sister that overrode the discussion, overrode to get him on the mission. Jordan's technical expertise is not in question. However, he responds poorly to high-pressure situations. That's why Raj had to replace him as CTO. He freezes when problems occur. The more he's pressured, the more prone he becomes to making rash decisions. He feels overshadowed by her in a big way. She's protective of him. Now we are told that he's working on a filtration problem in the green section. Is it possible that he turned off air in there he made a mistake and turned off air in there and then had to cover it up? The death of Sandra had to be premeditated, right? Because someone would have had to make this fake instructions that were designed to sabotage the batteries and cause a fire. So this had to be a very premeditated murder cover-up. Anna thinks she was killed in her room, but would someone really have dragged her body? I guess in the dark, you could drag her body, you cause a blackout, and then you rush back and drag her body. Seems like your chance of getting caught would be pretty damn high, though. You'd be better off just suffocating someone in her sleep and then letting people think she had a heart attack or something. Maybe to this item, I would add reread objective B notes. Maybe we should reread that article and see if there's something we've missed. The items that we just got, including maybe this mice thing. All right, does anyone have an answer? Does anyone have any better thoughts about, could it have been an accidental death and the fake battery instructions put together on the fly to cover it up? You'd have to have killed her the night before or something to be able to come up with this plan of battery fire. So she would have had to been dead for a long time before you got this opportunity, if you killed her by accident. But I agree, the radio left in the room is weird, but that could have been an honest mistake. Does anyone think they know where to look for information about where the mice were stored? How to answer that question? Jamie says, on the green radio log, was it only AJ that knew she would be in the greenhouse meditating? Well, he knows it, but he doesn't say, hey, only I know it. He didn't really say who knows it. All right, because no one is coming in on those others, I want to figure out, let me answer the one thing that I think no one will know that I could figure out, which is nailing down the blue movement tube that the colonel sees. Okay, starts with the lights going out. He says, the air mixture in the green sector has been off. I was trying to figure out if it was ... Okay, that sounds real. Okay, I followed Jordan's process on the clipboard. Okay. Where does Kurt come in? Colonel Abrams to crew. Should I be worried? I saw the lights go out. I couldn't call in for a head count until my hands were free. I'm in the airlock now, but I'll be dead in an hour if you haven't repressurized it. Okay, so as far as the colonel, he hits the airlock, it looks like, somewhere on at 11:16. Kurt in around 11:16, he's in the airlock. And he says he sees movement in blue shortly after. And then he sees more when the evac order is given about the fire suppression in green. Let's hear when that. It started hissing. He says, let's see what you're on. Okay, urgent message. All personnel evacuate green sector. Okay, so 11:24 is the evac order. And then Kurt sees more movement in blue. So 11:16 and 11:24, there's 2 points of movement. So is this the person going into blue to kill, going through the blue tube from the control room to kill her and then coming back out? So what I want to try to figure out if that could have been Hero or could have been Jordan, or can we narrow that down? So 11:16 and 11:20 here. This is our period right here. 11:24. So from here to here, who between Jordan and Hero could have done that? Now Hero is off the comms during this period, and his whereabouts are not known. So it certainly could have been Hero. Now, 11:16, Jordan is asking Amelia to come to him and expects her to be there. So he couldn't have gone to her room. And here's Hero not answering. Jordan says he left his radio here. So Jordan is still there. I think this implicates Hero as our killer. Because I don't see how Jordan could be the one that was seen going to blue. And surely the one seen going to blue surreptitiously is our killer. Does this change everything? Does our killer have to be Hero now, or a combination of Jordan and Hero? I mean, Jordan had to have been in the control room this whole time. He's talking about the radio is still here. He's talking about running the diagnostics. He's asking when she's going to be there. He expects her to be right there. I think this changes things. I think this means it has to have been Hero who went to the blue. He leaves. He said, I'm leaving. Jordan says, I think he's headed your way, says Amelia. Are you almost here? She says, I'm entering the blue hub now. Over. I think he's heading your way. Roger that. I'm in the middle of something. 16 minutes later, she's already there. AJ and Hero here in the red hub. I'm headed to green for sweet. He says don't go in green. She goes anyway. I'll head back to the red sector with the other. Yeah, she's not going from green to blue. Jamie says, Kurt must have seen Amelia. Amelia was in the blue hub just as Kurt entered. That doesn't make sense. He's not... I hear what you're saying. I was thinking about that. But I don't think Kurt is saying he sees people in the blue hub. Is he? If he says he sees people in the blue hub, then it's not important. But that's not what his diagram shows. His diagram shows that he saw people not in the blue hub, but in the walkway between the blue hub and the green hub. I saw flashes of movement when I first got into place, and then a bit more before the evac order was given. Oh, but he does say into the blue sector hub. That's unfortunate. But he seems to be pointing to here, not here. But then he says blue hub. That's unfortunate. Maybe he's not saying what he saw. Maybe he's saying this is where he was working. And then he came to here. Okay. All right. So I got this completely wrong. Maybe I got this completely wrong. Maybe he's saying I was out on a spacewalk and he was saying he was here. Okay, so maybe then he goes here. Okay, so maybe he does see through the blue hub. So there invalidates my whole theory of seeing someone and Hero walking this way. I was misreading this. All right, so that's totally... I was about ready to lock up Hero based on that. Okay, so that's totally useless information. All right, well, let's see what the chat says. Would the colonel keep the mice in his room? Yeah, why not? I mean, we really don't have any proof that they would have been in the science lab. Why wouldn't he keep it in his own room? That would invalidate the whole mice are alive thing if he kept it in his own room. And wouldn't he? Wouldn't he keep it in his own room? Is there any reason that we should think he didn't keep the mice in his own room? And doesn't that kill our whole theory of oxygen, etc.? Okay. Habitation. Whoops. Habitation shows this and says, guests stay in our habitation suites. There's a shared lounge and a series of secure sleeping rooms. They all have their own private sleeping room. So surely that's where the mice would have been. Which means they weren't in the lab, which means that oxygen probably was removed from the entire lab. So that cannot be our answer. So we're sort of back to square one now. We don't think the mice were in the lab. We think they were in his personal room, which means oxygen was removed from the lab. How do we know that she wasn't killed by suppression? That's so weird. Could Kurt be lying about the spacewalk? I don't think you can lie about something like that. They have to go recover him from the spacewalk. There had to be other people helping him get out. There's no lying about a spacewalk. Corsican says, I'm at the point where I think we should just review everything. Yeah, I think we may have to, depending on how serious we want to take this. The only other thing is if we have a good guess, we could try to guess before doing it. But I think we're back a step further than we were even last night. I mean, I suppose you could look at it the other way. We've made progress because I think we've eliminated the whole mice oxygen thing as a red herring. And we should be focusing instead on the idea that she was killed. No one says, hey, she wouldn't have. No one says Sandra would never leave her radio behind. But boy, does this scream out like it should be giving us some clue that we're somehow missing. I just can't see it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe not relevant, but reviewing yesterday's recording, the picture of the CTO shows a monitor with what looks like the procedure for the batteries, plus it has a Sakura mug on the desk. We are told that the batteries got cleared by the battery change order, got cleared by Raj, the CTO. So it wouldn't be surprising that it was on his computer. At least as of August 2nd. But let's take a look at that photo again to see what you're saying and if it's important. You're saying this picture here. Okay, well, on his desk is code. That's not the battery procedure. That's some programming comments or something. But you are right about the Sakura mug. That is interesting. Why does he have a Sakura mug? But everyone would have seen it, so doesn't seem to be worried about it. Hannah says, I think we should just guess the photo of the lab and the mice. I don't want to let us do that. Now I doubly think it shouldn't logically be the mice. You'd have to, if you can prove to me the mice were in the lab, if you can prove to me that the mice were in the lab, then I will entertain that. but we have to find evidence that the mice were in the lab. All right, we may have to review everything depending on how serious we want to be about this. I mean, this could be a short session once we unlock bonus envelopes B and C. Here's the mice box. They're a battery-powered habitat for 2 rodent subjects. Automatic feeder, regulated water, automatic light. It's odor controlled. It must be kept uncovered. I think this suggests that it was in his room because you couldn't have kept it uncovered in the lab. People would notice. It can't be stored in unpressurized cargo areas. That's why it had to be on his personal possession, I guess. Doesn't have its own self-contained air supply. And then we're told that they get bigger muscle mass. This isn't like a military thing that he would kill people over. So the colonel is not killing people to keep this secret. Of course, this could be a fake story, a fake cover story for what he was doing. And it's not real. Although there is this extra thing. Look, collect as much as possible of the Delta 1. You may not be alone. Our intelligence team has found similar information for sale on the dark web, indicating a high-level infiltration within Sandra Ivey. There are several international corporations and nation-states who would pay billions for the plans. So could Jordan be selling information on the dark web? Or someone? And Sandra discovered it, so that's why she has to be killed? Still doesn't really answer our question, though. Where is that last little newspaper article that we didn't make any sense out of? And why have I misplaced it? Oh, so many documents. All right, let's reread this. Raj could be the spy, yes. Let's see if there's anything here that we missed. We didn't see anything useful here, just story. Here they are, surviving members. A movie was made of it. Her brother is now CTO. Hero got made CEO. Did they work together? Deep respect. Amelia. Did they all kill her? No, too hard to organize. Amelia has gone back to work for Space Force. Only Anjay Singh has disappeared. Is Anjay Singh the person selling information to the dark web? He disappears. But he opened a yoga retreat in Oregon. So that doesn't sound like someone who just got away with murder. And got paid for it at least. And then we hear about this new law that was passed to put a space marshal. And then we have the movie that was made about the 28 minutes. That article just does not help anything. This case is a real... I shouldn't say this case. It's really just this one question that's really throwing us. Are we not thinking about this clearly? Let's try to clear our minds of the other stuff and just try to focus on answering this question. How do we prove that the suppression system didn't kill her? So thinking about that logically, it seems like there's two ways we could prove that. One is we could prove it directly, like if it had killed her, then we would see this. Like we would see bloodshot eyes, but we don't, so we know this wouldn't have killed her. The other way we could prove it is if we somehow could prove how she really was killed. Solomon thinks she was dead before this oxygen kicked on. So he's arguing that the oxygen did suck, the fire suppression did suck all the oxygen out, but she was already dead. I mean, could you say, hey, she doesn't have any signs of scratching to get out? She was just working on her laptop? That doesn't make sense if the oxygen was being sucked out. I mean, maybe the answer is this is our overthinking it. Like, what if the answer is as simple as this? I'm afraid that this is the answer here. I'm afraid that we are way overthinking it, and the answer is that she's found in the lab, but she knows that there are oxygen canisters in the health center. Is it? I think we might be overthinking this, and that the answer to this is simply that there was oxygen canisters in the health center, and if she was locked in here and couldn't breathe, then she would have gone to the health center and used the oxygen. I'm afraid that that is the answer. It's not convincing to me. Maybe she just didn't occur to her, but I think we should try putting in the green comms log and this photo. But I do not feel good about it because it seems like if that's what you're going to prove, then couldn't you prove that not needing this photo? Somewhere one of the women said, our captain says she found her floating. She got visual confirmation. So wouldn't that be as good as this photo to prove she was there? Let's reread that. In fact, maybe we need to reread all of the interrogations. Let me see this again. Uh, 20 minutes. Most of this conversation is about why did it take her so long, and she's saying she was in the bathroom, she was in the latrine. Coffee, da da da. Guess she doesn't say in here that she saw the body. Maybe she says it in her incident report. Let me see this. When I got to the red hub, she goes into the control room. She comes back. She finds AJ bumbling out of the observatory. Hero comes out of habitation. Where was Sandra? Power came on, was in the cafeteria. Sandra. Okay. I mean, no. All right, let's listen to our people here. Anna says, I think it's the mice. The cage is on the shelf in the lab. I don't see it, but maybe you could see it. I don't have hard evidence, but I would try it before going down the reviewing everything rabbit hole. If the cage is on the shelf in the lab, we should see it in the picture. Yeah, I agree with you. I just don't. Seems like you'd have to, if you really wanted that to be the evidence, you would have to show it in some way, and I just don't see how we see it. Why is that? Is it my desk shaking? Yeah. All right. Anyway, it really seems like they'd want to make it. They did give us a magnifying glass. You are seeing it very magnified. You are seeing it on screen better than the naked eye can see it. So I also don't understand, why would he put it here? Why wouldn't he put it, yes, you just have to realize, I know you say it's fuzzy, but look, I mean, this is how big it is. It's a little tiny postcard. So I don't think you can see it much better. Why would he put it in the lab and not his room? We were told the mice box has a specific number on it. That's a slightly interesting point. That's a little bit interesting. We aren't really told it has a number on it. We're just told that it has an internal number. It's in the battery-powered habitat, which is MH908. Now, you don't think that there was a little number on this? No. Are we? It just says Delta 1. I can see now that says Delta 1. Feels like we are really overthinking this, or something is obvious, because it can't be that this game is really hiding something so well. What are we missing? Like, what is going on? What is going on? I mean, he's given us his theory. It doesn't make sense. Sandra would have stayed in the lab. I know in my gut Sandra was already dead. Can we prove the fire suppression system wasn't the real culprit like everyone says? I'm just at a loss here. I'm really at a loss. I feel like other people have played this and not had this problem. So why are we, with this whole group, why are we unable to figure this out? Glasses, I mean, everything's just floating in this room. So I don't know that there's anything to be figured out by the fact that you look at what evidence could we choose from. All right, here's what we're going to do. We've been playing for an hour and 15 minutes, recapping for an hour and 15 minutes. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to make an executive decision here. We're going to try to guess at two things. We're going to try Anna's guess, and we're going to try my best guess. And if those are wrong, we're going to back up and go through everything again, maybe starting with interrogations. But we're going to start. Hopefully this isn't going to give us too much of a hint when we're wrong. All right, so Anna is one of our chief detectives, so we're going to go with Anna first. And the two pieces of evidence that Anna wants us to use are the mouse report, the mouse paper, which we're going to have to assume is this very misleadingly called Mighty Mouse instructions, which by all intents and purposes should only be this one sheet. There's no excuse for that line, Operation Mighty Mouse instructions, also covering this academic paper. But since the academic paper isn't there, we're going to choose that. That's already a huge problem. And then Anna wants to combine this with the photo of the laboratory. So not the 6x9 Sandra Ivey photo, but the dead battery in, not the dead body in the science lab. And the reasoning is Anna's reasoning is that the Mighty Mouse instructions proves that the mice survived. And then why do we need the photo? Because the photo, you think, is supposed to prove that that's where the mice were, right? Even though we don't see any mice here, you think that's what proves that the mice were there. It would seem more likely to me if we wanted to prove that we wanted to have some evidence that the mice were there, we'd be better off finding someone discussing that the mice were there, or evidence that the mice were there, since we can't see it. But Anna thinks maybe we are supposed to have seen it somewhere. If this is right, I'm going to be angry at this game that I otherwise am loving. But okay, here we go. We're going to try it. I really hope for the sake of the reputation of this game. I mean, I don't know what the real answer is going to be. So I don't know what to be more angry about, but I'm not going to be happy about this. Let me get my bullets ready. And let me get a big sip of coffee here because I don't want to go on tilt here. Okay, here we go. Please confirm you understand the evidence fully. Which mouse fact is needed to solve the objective? Mice need air to breathe. This looks like this is going to be it. Okay, and the button to click is missing. Switch to the desktop site version. Now I have to answer this again. All right, so you can see there's a hint of a button, but whether I view this in the desktop site or the mobile site, it seems to be a button is missing. What a shame. Can I somehow click this button? Oh boy. Why would you can see that the button is invisible, right? Oh. What you've done this game wrong. Tab to it. Yeah, okay, there we go. Sorry, that's not it. You already know the mice were in the lab with Sandra. How does that fact prove Sandra didn't suffocate? All right. Oh! Why do these companies ruin their games with these broken websites? So it's lost where we are, it's lost our thing, it's broken the button, and it's confused. Did I click the right thing? There? That doesn't make sense. We did not click the air button. Okay. Need air to breathe. Okay, now. Okay. Ah. So apparently the number is on that box. So the idea that someone had that we could see the number, but it's upside down. Well, someone had the idea to look for that number, but why didn't we see it? Let's see if we could see it again. So we zoomed in, and the channel said it's too blurry, and you were right. I guess it's just too blurry. Is it using the right camera? Yeah, that's just as close up as I can get it. Let me see with my glasses. Let me see. Maybe you can see it with the naked eye. Well, maybe so. Maybe so. Maybe my zooming in cubes just don't have quite the resolution. Mm. Well, it's too much trouble to get the tablet camera out. But well, I guess we can talk about this at the end, but what's a little bit frustrating is the group figured this basic idea out 3 hours ago. We saw the mice. The group said it's the mice are alive, so the oxygen couldn't have been sucked out. That was 3 hours ago. And then we went through this roller coaster of rejecting that because, one, we couldn't find the right form listed, the article on the thing. And then we read over and over again statements that oxygen really was sucked out of the entire hub. So, and then the fact that this number was so hard to see. That was a very clever idea, but it just... I just wish they had done better. Nelson says, when I saw it, I could see the numbers better. Well, this might be the first time that my cube zooming system has failed us. We tried to see it. I think if we had, maybe if we had connected the two, in the chat, I forget who it was in the chat, did say there is a number on the box. And maybe if we had sat with that for a little bit longer and looked for that number. I just wish the game had done a better job out of putting the evidence properly listed on the page, and been a little more fair about its description of oxygen being sucked out. Because we fully considered the idea that the oxygen wasn't sucked out of the lab. But then we kept reading that in different places it was very clear that the oxygen was sucked out. So, well, at least we didn't spend 2 hours going back through it. You could see how a group could solve this without spending the 2 hours we spent. If they saw this thing and they didn't get hung up on the misleading things about oxygen being sucked out, and they didn't get hung up on the evidence on the website, they didn't even they could make those 2 pages as one, but they shouldn't have called it covert mouse instructions. They could just say the mouse report or the mouse papers. All right, on a different note, Dispaminite has a very good point. Like, does this now put Amelia as front and center suspect since she says that the place was filled with smoke? That's a very good point. Anna says, I have a different opinion. After reading the new envelope, it was clear to me the mice had to be involved. After that, it was obvious. Well, yeah, Anna is very good at this meta stuff. She's pretty good at ruling out things that are faulty but are irrelevant. But you did agree, Anna, that as we investigated it more, the game seemed to be very clearly telling us that the air was sucked out of everywhere in the green hub. But Anna was right, as usual, in terms of anticipating what the game wants, and is particularly good at anticipating what the game wants. All right, well, I'm a little on tilt here. We've been playing for an hour and a half. It's time for a break. We'll take a break. We'll try to reset, regroup, open up the next envelope, and get back to the game. I'll see you in 8 minutes. Well, I can't help but be a little bit disappointed and frustrated that the way that unfolded, but you can't give this game a bullet for that. The bullets are for really bad puzzles. This is one that the group immediately thought of, but we got thrown off track by a couple different reasons, some of which is the fault of the game, that bad list of evidence, and the misleading information about oxygen coming out of the green hub in various places. But on the other hand, it did give us enough hints that we should have been able to figure it out. And one of the key ones was very late in the game. And I guess if there's any consolation here, it's that spending 2 hours, I mean, we looked at this picture for the mice. We looked over and over again because it was very natural. Our intuition said that this picture was key. We looked for the mice over and over again. We tried to zoom in over here, and it really didn't look like there was anything. This green looked like it was windows or something to me. It didn't look like anything. But if there's any justification for us spending 2 extra hours going through notes, it was when DJ said, hey, the report mentions a box number, MH908, battery-powered habitat, MH908. And I said, well, that doesn't necessarily mean there was a label on the box. But then we went back and looked for MH908, and we didn't find it. And that was us being careless, because that was a very good idea to look for that number. It was the explanation for why we didn't see mice through a window, because the only clue there was the number. And that is what we should have spotted. If we had spotted that number, if we had said yes, we should be looking for that MH908 and we found it. If we had done that, then we could have claimed credit for it being valuable for us to spend that time. Let me see if this thing would have fixed it. So yes, if we had zeroed in, if we had used the little magnifying glass that comes with the game, I mean, it was upside down. We also had to make that leap of logic. But yes, I guess that's on us. That's on me. Anna is complaining. It was the same with question 1, but because you saw it, you said it was a brilliant puzzle. Well, the problem here is not, I don't think that's a fair criticism. My complaints of this puzzle, and I think this is valid, but my complaints with this puzzle are not the same. I don't think that's a fair criticism. My complaints were that when you line up multiple points of failure, you create a problem. And here, the website not listing the proper evidence was our first point of failure. The second point of failure was just the logic of us convincing ourselves at the end, why wouldn't he just keep it in his room? And then the difficulty of seeing this number, and, you know, that's a user error, us, of just writing off. But at a certain point when text is so small, I write it off as being not relevant. But that's a little bit of a failure on my part. But then the fact that we considered this possibility very early, but then started to have doubts because so many different places seemed to be assuming that the green section was deprived of oxygen. Now, there were clues there that made us think that maybe it wasn't. Like it said, when it sees smoke, it's removed. That was great. That was a nice subtle hint that maybe if there wasn't smoke, it wouldn't be cleared. That's why we entertained the idea and considered for quite a while that maybe the lab wasn't cleared of smoke. But then we read over and over again that the coal green hub was deprived of oxygen. And that's why the hub was hissing. So that's misleading. That's slightly unfair for the game to be seeming to tell us that the green hub did suck out the oxygen. And then when our guy says, yes, it sucked out the oxygen, but she was dead before it sucked out the oxygen. Those kinds of things seem to be contradictory. Nelson says, I think Jordan explains it very clearly in the intercoms. Well, Jordan explains very clearly that when there's smoke, it sucks out the oxygen. But there's other places. Nelson says, hey, the green hub is not the same as the green sector. Oh, that's interesting. Oxygen, hissing was sealing the green sector. It doesn't mean sucking out the oxygen. Marco says, on the positive side, we now know that we must use the magnifying glass more often. I think there are lessons to be learned here. There are lessons to be learned for using a magnifying glass, yes. And considering smaller text relevant. I wish we had spent more time with DJ's observation about the box number. I think that was a missed. That's the one that hurts the most to me, because that feels like that was our chance to get this, to solve this properly. I still don't consider that we solved it properly, but I know Anna's not going to like to hear that. But I think DJ gave us the option. The green hub is the round area where the batteries are. Another part that's our fault in terms of missing the puzzle, one part of this puzzle, is a very clever design, which is that Amelia saw smoke. Now we're going to have to reinterpret this whole thing again. This is going to be, it feels like this is going to be another hour of us reinterpreting what Amelia says. All right, let me just dwell on this and try to not get frustrated about this. The whole channel has basically concluded that Amelia was lying about seeing smoke, which is a great observation, a great conclusion, and I think we were suckered into believing her about smoke. But let me ask you a question now. That's a great observation that she was lying if she saw smoke. But now let me ask you a question. Did she see smoke in the hub, in all of green, or did she specifically see smoke in the lab? Because if she just saw smoke in the hub, then that doesn't mean she was lying. Yes, we have another envelope to open. But before we open that, I want to get this Amelia thing cleared up. Yes, we know Jordan said there was a filtration problem. All right, now, does the chat want to offer up a suggestion before we start accusing Amelia of lying, which is very tempting? Certainly could be Amelia lying, but where does Amelia, before I open up this envelope, where does Amelia say the smoke? Not in her incident report. She says she's on the latrine. Incident report number 5. Okay. When you say incident report number 5, I don't see numbers on any of these. Are you talking about Amelia's incident report? Number 5. The door to the green sector hissed shut just as I arrived. Jordan insisted I shouldn't be anywhere near there, and that's when it hit. No, that's not right. Come on, guys. Please help me, not hurt me. Where does Amelia say it was filled with smoke? Because before we accuse her of lying about that, we need to actually see it and see where she was saying the green paper, bottom of second side. You're saying the comms log? Where does she say she looked in and it's full of smoke? The other side, the first side, not the second side? At 11:25. So not this side, this side. Thank you. Just give me the times. I'm at the hatch to the green hub. It started hissing. I'm only seeing smoke inside. Okay, so we cannot accuse Amelia of lying, right? Because she doesn't claim to see inside the lab smoke. Can we at least get agreement there now? We're all in agreement now that the hub is here. The lab is here. She's come up through here, and all she sees is smoke in here. So she's not claiming that she saw smoke in here. She may still be our culprit, but we have to back off the theory that she was lying about smoke. It was a great theory that she must have been lying about smoke. But it's not the case. All right, at least there's that. At least there's that. All right, let's open up the other envelope. Deep breaths, deep breaths. All right. I mean, she might be lying, but probably not. Probably it is sealing it off because it's full of smoke. But somehow the lab didn't get it. All right. Deep breath. You did it. There's no way around it. If Kurt's mice survived in the science lab, there must have been air to breathe. The fire suppression system didn't kill Sandra. I have a few friends at Sandra Ivey who still take my call, so I ran this by Raj Mandal. He confirmed the AFS system only removes oxygen in rooms where smoke is detected. So if the lab door was closed before the battery began smoking, the lab would not have been flushed of oxygen. Sandra was trapped in there, but there was plenty of air to breathe. When Sandra was found suffocated so close to the fire, everyone assumed the lab was flushed along with the hub. It was the most logical conclusion, and with no evidence to the contrary, we all fell for it. But your discovery with these mice proves it didn't happen. It took an outsider to see what all the experts were blind to. I think there's a lesson here. Now that we're one step closer to figuring out who orchestrated the Delta One tragedy, I'm excited to tell you about a new lead I just stumbled on. Sandra's laptop was in the lab with her when she died. The battery's dead, but I took it back to Earth and handed it over to Zelek. I told him we should have forensic technicians conduct a thorough analysis back then, but Raj let it slip that it's been in storage ever since. Raj is no rule breaker, but he's not my only friend at Astro IV, and fortunately, another one owed me a favor. After she snuck Sandra's laptop out to me, I took it to a private digital forensics expert to see what we could get, and well, I think you're just going to have to read it yourself. There may be a way to find out exactly what happened to Sandra that morning, and it may even come from Sandra herself. Let's keep digging. Solomon Hart. Okay, so our objective is to figure out who killed Sandra, the final piece of the puzzle, and this was the forensic examination of her laptop. Hold on, I'm going to turn off this air conditioner. Cybercrime Consulting Group. All right. Examiner Suzanne Richards. Analysis of retrieved laptop, device dead on delivery, present in suspected foul play incident. High sensitivity, client requested we unlock the computer, and if that's not possible, run a complete diagnostics analysis on the hardware. It's a MacBook Pro, 2021, 16-inch screen. Liquid SC SD port. Okay, decal on outer panel, Velcro strips taped to the bottom to secure it in zero gravity. Unlock device, fail. We were unable to unlock the device. The admin account, they don't have a password. Active encryption on startup disk, halted attempts to brute force and unlock, system set for automatic memory erasure in the event of 3 failed attempts. They scanned the USB port. Laptop could not be unlocked. Forensic analysis was limited to information collected through the USB-C port using proprietary scanning software. Scan results were typical for a device of this usage, except these findings that may be relevant. The hard drive was cloned. Metadata analysis of the hard drive indicates 100% of the files on this computer were last accessed on August 10th, 2021. That's our accident date. No, yes. Yes, that's our accident date. Audio was recording during the tragedy. We were able to determine the laptop's built-in microphone was actively recording audio from 11:08 to 11:11. So this is right before the battery outage until a little bit after it. The actual outage comes at 11:10, so it's recording a minute before and after. That's interesting. A couple minutes before and a minute after. Audio files are likely stored on Astro Ivey's cloud services. We suspect they were automatically syncing to our Astro Ivy account. It is the forensic examiner's opinion someone on board the Delta One cloned the contents of this computer within the time frame that Sandra Ivey was killed. She appears to have been recording audio at the same time. No audio files were saved. My guess is they are stored somewhere on the Astro Ivy cloud, and we can actually go to the website to see if we can log into her account. All right, well, that's what we're going to do then. I didn't expect there was a website here in this game, but I may have to get my Astro Ivy. I may have to get my keyboard. Astro IV, outer space is waiting for you. Look at this. Book my trip, contact us. The Astro IV mission. We're opening space to everyone, including you. Astro IV is dedicated to making space a destination open to everyone. Join us for a 2-week getaway in low Earth orbit on one of our Delta Series space stations. Astro IV hopes to increase investment both personally and publicly in making space technology more affordable and reliable to produce. In the spirit of that mission, we also offer fully funded scholarship flights for promising students and researchers who could benefit from access to our cutting-edge microgravity modules. They told me the sky's the limit, and thankfully I didn't listen, says Sandra Ivey. The Delta series, first multi-use microgravity habitat designed for prolonged occupancy. We've got some images, and we've got a whole bunch of pages. We can look at their mission. Founded by Sandra Ivey, under premise innovation begins with accessibility. Her passing in 2021, surviving members have carried on Sandra's mission, whether it's to enhance potential of private research or it's an extended vacation to spark wonder. It's our goal to provide the first crucial step in making our society super terrestrial. You may be thinking by accessible, we mean accessible to the affluent and wealthy. And while it's true that a stay on the Delta station is outside the means of everyday man, this is just the beginning. Space is expensive. Look at history. Making space accessible. Astro IV hopes to increase public investment. Fully funded scholarships. Okay, Delta One page. Welcome to our flagship series of the cutting-edge multi-use habitats, designed for a luxury experience for both tourists and researchers alike, replete with state-of-the-art research and recreation. Station is able to be maintained and operated by a minimal number of trained personnel. Long gone are the days of space only being available to those with years of expertise or training. Passage to space is comparable to the standard requirements to scuba dive here on Earth. And we've got some drawings. We've got, in fact, a full video here we can watch, which we are going to watch. I don't know if it has audio. All right, you can hear it. Typically, this also gets copyright strikes on YouTube. Was it music or any audio of importance? And I don't know why I couldn't hear it. And for some reason, the audio is broken. All right. All right, it's just one of those days. Airwalk is a staging area. Cafeteria. These are the photos we've seen on the poster. There's the control room. There's the science lab. These are all pictures from the poster. There's the health center, the greenhouse, recreation room. There's the habitation, private rooms, and the observatory. Okay, if you click book a trip, you can fill out this form. Okay. No prices listed here. Book my trip to space. Okay. Now, if you click contact us, you can get to a contact form and then log in. This is where we think we could log in. Okay. So we're told her account. We're told her account on her device, but maybe she used the same one here, which was SIV at astroiv.com, and then forget password. Okay, so normally this would mail you. So let's see what happens here. Sandra Ivey at astroiv.com. Okay, let's see. Is it going to ask us some questions? Yes. Okay. What college did you attend? All right, so we just need to find the information on Sandra. This is probably from the newspaper at the beginning of the case, right? Or let's see, or her MIT. I guess she had the MIT cup on her desk, so we think it's probably MIT. I forget if we were told, but let's try. Okay, so was it Rice? It's on the reunion photo. All right. I am willing to go with things that the channel remembers, but I insist that things be done. I can't, that's where they dedicated the building in her honor because she's alumnus. Okay, good. That's fine. So if we look at this, we were told Rice University because that's her alumnus. Okay, fine. So we'll just put Rice here. Hopefully that's sufficient. What street did you grow up on? It's either going to be on that photo with Solomon or in that first newspaper, I guess. Does anyone remember? Okay, well, it wasn't on this one. Was it on this one? Was it on the Jordan interrogation? That is a very good memory. I think you are absolutely right. I think when he talked to Jordan, he talked about the brother and sister growing up. Let's see. I think that's a good memory. I think you're probably right. Is this the part? He's talking about knowing them as a kid, I think. Here is talking about their childhood. Pretty sure it's here somewhere. You're glossing over the part. Your startup failed. You had to move back in with your mother. Doubt she told you I helped her box up all your old Transformers off the ceiling. Oh, I thought this was going to be here. Houston, retire in Florida. Why it's not here? child going back home. And your mom got to retire in Florida. So he moved back home. Let's see if that's consistent. Yes. Okay. So he's back in Houston where his mother lived. So he's living in their home. So we think this is probably going to be that street. So it was a combination of he's currently living where she grew up. Okay. What is your favorite book? I mean, we did see the photo of her office. Oh no, she bought the AJ's book. It was AJ's book that she bought for everyone. It was AJ's book. Okay, so where is AJ's book mentioned? Is it on his little summary sheet? She bought a copy for everyone. Is it here on this thing though? Sandra Ivey. I know that's what it is, but I'm not 100% sure where we told the name of it. Does anyone remember where? I wonder if it's on this list. Hardcover nonfiction. Is it in her office photo? It could be in her office photo too. There he is, right? Because look, he named himself that Swami, didn't he? Singhuru? I forget where he says about his other name. We might also find it here. Guess we might need the magnifying glass for that if we can find it. But there's somewhere else she mentions how she bought his book. But I do think that he says his name is Singhuru, but it'll be nice to get confirmation of that. Do we think that's it though? He says the Swami name on the full page on him. Where does he confirm that it's Singhuru? Please don't give answers in the chat. Don't give spoilers. We've already figured it out in this case, but please be careful about not giving spoiler answers. Second paragraph. In India, I gained the title of Swami Singhuru. Okay, fine. And that just confirms what we were looking for when we looked for it here and found it. Breathtaking by Swami Singhuru. We haven't found the page that mentions she bought the book for everyone, but I forget where that was. But somewhere she does say she bought the book for everyone. Okay, so the name of the book is Breathtaking. And it's insisting on being all capitals. I'm just going to assume that it's okay with those capitalizations. Okay, identity verified. Thank you, Sandra. You may now enter the employee portal. Okay, so we're going to get to listen to the audio she recorded, which means I have to fix my audio so that I can hear it too. Don't know why that's not working. Welcome to your employee portal, Sandra. Online file storage, health benefits, my time off, employee information, retirement, vision, and dental. All right, well, let's start with the good stuff, I guess. Alert, audio processing failed while uploading this voice memo. Click here to complete processing. Access disabled. What? Processing failed. Click here to retry. Okay.
Captain's log, stardate August 10th, 2021. Day 10 of Delta 1 trip. And hey, nobody's killed each other. Not yet. We'll see if Hero and Jordan make it out alive after working together. Speaking of working together, I'm kind of surprised these cyber attacks haven't lightened up since we joined forces with Sasaki. Raj sent me this spreadsheet of all the attacks with times, location, and any other details he could find out, but I'm not seeing any patterns yet. Wait, what's this? A bunch of these are from inside the company. Why didn't this get flagged? Oh, well, that's why no one said anything. These are all from my old laptop, which I haven't touched since I upgraded in January. Where did I... It's at the guest house. Oh boy, I gotta reach out to Saul. He'll know what to do. What happened to the lights? Ooh, this is not good. Where's my radio? Jeez, you scared me. How long have you been here? We should, all head back to Blue Sector. I just need a second to, What are you? Stop!
Wow. We actually heard the murder. That's scary. So it's in her old laptop at her guest house. And Anna points out that was a male attacker voice we heard, not our Captain Amelia. So it's Swami that's staying at her guest house? I was going to say who's staying at her guest house, but it was Swami. The Swami is the one staying at her guest house. So the Swami is our culprit selling her information. She was strangled, or maybe he put his hand over her mouth. Or maybe they just missed it because they assumed it would be strangulation. So yeah, AJ Singh was the one staying at her guest house. So is that it? Is that solved it? I think that might solve it. We could see what other information is on her page. Health benefits have been disabled. Time off, disabled. Employee information, disabled. Retirement plans, disabled. vision and dental disabled. Okay, so it was just the audio. All right, so if we think it's AJ now, we could go back and look at the information he's given us. So we think he is now the person who is selling information. Okay, so we could look at his, before we accuse him, we could just check and see if there's anything. He says he was at the observatory meditating, and he felt a shift in the aura. He ignored it. Then he comes out to the red hub. He sees Amelia, angry. I looked at her for clarity. She was intent on finding Hero. Tension between them was palpable. Then he heard the call for evac, and Amelia runs off. All right, well, he doesn't really give us any information. His incident report at 11:30 listed no one had visual on him for a while. I don't know what the 11:30 has to do with anything, but yeah, no one. Well, I guess by the time he's seen coming out of the observatory, is already Amelia, and it's right before. Well, we don't really have times clear here. It's right before she. It's right before Hero arrives from habitation. Right before Hero comes out of the room. We might look at what Amelia says about him. When I got to the Red Hub, so she makes her way to the control room after being in the latrine. Then she comes back when Jordan is done. She tries to get Hero. She can't find him, so she comes back to the red sector. When I got to the Red Hub, AJ came bumbling out of the observatory, just like he said. But we know this is. We can pinpoint when that time was. So I guess by that time, the person he's already killed her and come back. I'll go find him. So I have AJ and Hero here in the Red Hub. So it's 11:24 by the time anyone puts eyes on AJ. So there you have it. 11:24, AJ emerges from the observation room. So presumably when power went out at 11:10, he had 14 minutes to go kill her, copy the hard drive, and then run back to the observatory where he emerges. No one catching him in a lie, really. Let's see if Hero catches him in a lie. I came out of habitation to meet her as soon as I heard. Before she could get a full sentence out, Jordan called her off the radio. Everything's consistent, but no one sees him before 11:24 or so. Morbid irony that his book is called Breathtaking. Yes, very. And I'll tell you what's odd, though. It's a little bit odd that he's stealing all this information. Why did he kill her? Someone must have paid him to kill her, right? Because he doesn't need to kill her. It just so happens that she is discovering right when he kills her. Oh. Okay. No. If he sabotaged the ship, I was going to say maybe he was just going in there to save her, and then he saw that she had just looked at the records that implicated him and had to kill her. But that can't be the case because this sabotage had to be long planned. So, but I think the answer to that question about why is he killing her, the most likely answer is the information that the colonel had, which is just that there is someone stealing information about Astro IV and selling it to the dark web, and they must have paid him. So he must be paid by a rival to kill her. Maybe even Sasuke, for all we know. But yeah, he must have been paid to kill her. Otherwise, why would he? He doesn't know at this point that she's figured out that he's stealing stuff from her. All right, well, let's answer this final question. Who killed Sandra? Because now we have our culprit. Who killed Sandra? Okay, where did she leave her old laptop? In her guest house. Who killed her? AJ, because he's living in her guest house. Any disagreement with this before I click enter? Any disagreement? Agreed. Everyone agrees. Okay. Yes, AJ killed Sandra to steal secrets from her computer. That's a weird motive. That's a weird motive. I see. I guess he didn't. I guess he never successfully hacked into the account, so he's decided to do it now. But boy, that's a complicated. That is. How does he know to sabotage the batteries? He must have been paid by Sasuke. That's the only explanation. All right, so nice little explanation how you could have solved it. I do like this. You've just solved the case. You may now open bonus envelope C. Okay, so before we do that, let's see what this breaking story tells us.
And we have breaking news for you at this hour in the 2021 murder of Astro IV founder Sandra Ivey. As you might recall, Ms. Ivey died while aboard the Delta One space station on August 10th, 2021. Authorities believed her death was an accident until today, when a team of investigators discovered a hidden audio recording of Ivey's murder. Authorities now say she was killed by AJ Segretti, who posed as spiritual counselor AJ Singh to steal company secrets from Astro IV. Sandra Ivey discovered Segretti's scheme, and the con man covered it up by murdering her. Oregon police apprehended Segretti, and they tell us he confessed to orchestrating the entire Delta One disaster. Right now, he's being charged with first-degree murder and multiple other charges as well. According to officials, Segretti will never see the outside of a prison cell again.
Anna says, well, skip this part. The solution told us that he killed her to cover up that he was hacking information, but that doesn't make sense. How did he why did he sabotage this whole space station. First of all, how did he know how to sabotage it? How did he get access to the clipboard to sabotage it? And if she hadn't discovered that he was the culprit yet, if she discovered it in the seconds before he killed her, why, if she discovered it right as he was killing her, then obviously he couldn't have planned this whole thing. But we could imagine a different scenario where she's his close confidant, right? So maybe she told him, like the night before, hey, I just got the records about where the cyber hacking is coming from. I'm going to go study them tomorrow. So maybe he figured his goose was cooked and he had to kill her. How he figured out the batteries and how he got in there to change the batteries, I don't know. It's a bit of a weird thing. Okay. So it's now telling us, though, that we can open this final envelope. Maybe it's explained here. Okay, let's see. Maybe it is going to be explained here. Okay, here's our final little bonus envelope. Okay. It's going to be his confession. Maybe it's going to make sense. Okay. $10 off your next case. Oh, that's not nothing. All right. If you enjoyed it, you can go leave them a review. And here's a picture from Solomon. We got him. I sent the audio you found straight to the police, and they called me in as soon as they cleared a warrant. I was on the scene when they cuffed AJ. Looked him straight in the eyes as I slapped this photo for you. We found the cloned hard drive in his home. This one's open and shut. He won't be conning his way out of this. It won't bring Sandra back, but I know her mother will sleep easier knowing that justice was served. I will too. With my eternal thanks, Solomon Hart. Okay, let's read the confession now. Voluntary confession. Let's see if it's going to make sense. Anthony Joseph Segretti. My given name is AJ Segretti, and I was born and raised in New Jersey. I made a name for AJ Singh after moving to New York City. In a few short years, I went from a woo-woo yogi to the bespoke spiritual advisor to the 1%, in what was quite possibly the biggest grift in the galaxy. I'd still be sitting pretty, too, if Hero wasn't such a ham on social media. It was nothing personal. I liked Sandra. She was smart, brilliant even, but maybe a little too smart for her own good. I knew Sandra was my mark the day she walked in the door. But my real meal ticket would come from the Astro 4 itself. Insider trading isn't really my forte, but I figured if I could get on her computer, someone like Hiro Sasaki would be willing to pay millions under the table to get a peek. Sandra kept her laptop on hand 24/7 and locked up like Fort Knox if she needed to take so much as a bathroom break. I thought about stealing the whole thing, but had no idea if I'd be able to use it or how easy it would be to track. I decided copying Sandra's hard drive to a portable device was a safer bet, but I needed her to unlock it first. I was focused on finding an opportunity as soon as I arrived on the Delta One. I figured the close quarters and change in routine might give me an opening. I nudged Sandra to step in while Hero and Jordan were bickering, and steered the conversation toward letting Hero do that battery procedure himself. The Delta One only has one printer, and Jordan wrote the protocol right there on the computer attached to it. All I had to do was open recent. All that clearance talk didn't really amount to much. I saw the warning at the bottom, so I swapped the codes for active and emergency charge and hit print. Sandra spent mornings in the lab, so I knew where she'd be when Hero got started. Hero and Jordan would take care of themselves, but I needed to keep Kurt and Amelia busy. I told Kurt that I saw something flapping near the green sector hub the day before Hero rotated the batteries, and sure enough, Kurt was outside the station right when I needed him to be. Amelia came by like clockwork every morning to drink my tea, so I slipped a laxative into her second cup and told her I was heading to the observatory to meditate. I went to the green hub instead, where I waited for the Jordan and Hero show to start. My plan was to clone Sandra's computer while she was preoccupied trying to play mediator in the control room. That's when I overheard Sandra talking to herself. That was pretty normal for her. All these rich folk love the sound of their own voice. And then she started talking about me. Somehow my early attempts to get info off her old laptop were coming back to bite me. And I knew the jig was up. My head started spinning when I realized Houston PD would be on the ground waiting for me. There's no chance to escape, and if detectives started digging, they'd find enough dirt to lock me up for life. That's when everything went dark and I played the only card I had left. I got behind Sandra and put her in a chokehold. It took a long time to be sure she was dead, but I couldn't risk leaving any marks. I hooked my portable SSD up with her laptop, cloned her hard drive, then I rushed back to the observatory just before I heard Amelia come into the red hub screaming for Hero. I had no idea my changes would nearly blow up the station. I just wanted Jordan and Hero to get in a fight that would keep Sandra busy. But when Jordan brought up the smoke and depleting oxygen, I knew I was golden. I had a good sweat when I heard you spotted that protocol, but I knew there was no connection to me there. But how was I supposed to know Kurt brought a class pet and that Solomon Hart would be able to get the USSF to spill the beans on it? That recording was the real kicker, though. I went through every single one of the files I copied off her laptop looking for anything that might put them on my trail and didn't find anything. So I sold off what I could to foreign investors and bought a quiet place in Oregon to retire. And I'd still be there resting on my laurels, not hurting anybody, if Solomon Hart could learn to let go. I wasn't lying when I told him that finding someone to blame wouldn't change anything. Pinning me won't bring her back, and it won't change that he wasn't there when she needed him. You tell him that from me. AJ Singh. Okay, so we get a little bit of an explanation that makes a little bit of sense. First of all, he didn't plan out the whole fire, smoke, cover-up thing on purpose. He basically was just trying to get the two of them to fight. So he changed the procedure printout and hoped that Sandra would be distracted enough to leave her laptop open. That was his only plan. But then he stumbled onto her at that coincidence, stumbled onto her realizing that he must be the hacker, and then he just panicked and killed her. And we get a little bit of an explanation for why Amelia was suffering. That is reasonable. I mean, it's cartoonish in this, but not outside the scheme of what's allowed in these kinds of games. Well, he thought he'd be able to steal it and sell it to someone. Okay, so we're at an hour. What we're going to do is we're going to take our normal 8-minute break, and then we're going to come back and talk about it. Talk about this case. And try to not let our little hiccup affect too much. We'll come back in 8 minutes. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear what I have to say about it too. I'll see you in 8 minutes. We are back for final thoughts here on Unsolved Case Files, Sandra Ivey. Let's see what the chat thought. I like parts 1 and 2. Part 3 seems totally ridiculous to me, ruined the whole story. It's very quick to say this, some little silly character, unbelievable part ruins the whole story. I think that's going too far. DJ Mike says, for me, the actual deductions we needed to make were nothing special, but I really liked the story. It lacked the humor of the Moonbase game, but the plot was more engaging. Nelson, who played this separately, says, when I played, I really liked the fact that a fire suppression system had covered up a real murder. It seemed so appropriate for a space setting. I find that AJ trying to steal secrets is not such a bad motive. Yeah, most of the story was good and interesting. The key puzzle in parts 1 and 2 was blurry writing, maybe a bit repetitive there, but interesting. Fleshed out characters, engaging mystery. It's nuts that someone would risk blowing up the space station they're on, but I guess AJ is an idiot. He's painted as a social engineer. He just wanted to create confusion. All right, so let me try to collect some thoughts here. I think overall, the overwhelming opinion of this is very positive. It far exceeded my expectations in every way. The production quality is very high. I mean, just look at this map of the space station, the website they built with full sets of information. There was quite a bit of multimedia. The newspaper articles are all on nice newsprint. There's very generous interrogations, a huge stack of photos. They're all very well done. They're in their space garb and everything. I mean, very high production quality and enjoyable documents to go through. Dense, nice documents. I think we all loved this very well done, tense comms transcript where the blackout happens and then they're panicking and everyone's talking, and this was really well done and really fun to go through. And then even that initial list of the initial investigator, what he did and where he gathered each thing, this was wonderful. And it let us recreate his steps. I mean, really as good as we've seen in terms of collection of documents and being interested to dig into the documents. And then the other thing that jumped out when reading the log and the interrogation statements, I think this is one of these things that I look for that we don't get very often, but when you get it, it's so appreciated, which is the humanity, psychology, personalities come out. So we get an interrogation of each person, and it's our detective leading the interrogation who's personally invested in this. He knows one of them, grew up with one of them. He's tough on all of them. He has a personality. We can see it. We can see his personality, and we understand his motivation, his emotional motivation that he feels he let this girl down. We get their personality in these interrogations. We also get their personalities because they've each written up a big long statement about what they were doing. And then we get their personalities because we've got their personnel records, which is like a third party discussion of them with their little psychological profiles. And then we get one more, which is the doctor sends our guy a little summary of her opinion of everyone. By the time we're done, all of these suspects have real personalities that we really understand. This captain of the ship is like military background. She takes offense at someone criticizing her. the colonel who is like, it's all classified, it's above you. I mean, really brilliantly done. And that makes for a good game. Even if like there's no mystery, if you're just reading the story and you didn't have to solve anything, I think you'd have fun with this. And I don't remember that being the case in Harmony Ashcroft. A little bit. But here, they really did a great job. I mean, an outstanding job. And that solves whatever minor complaints we might have. To me, that's what makes this so enjoyable. And then I think, even beyond that, the story was compelling. The story of this murder, and we played through the first half of it, and we still didn't understand who did it, why. We didn't have motive. We knew some things were off, but we didn't understand what the motive was. And could her brother really have killed her on purpose? Was it a mistake? That was a really interesting story that I really wanted to get to the bottom of. And it was interesting to have, like most of these cases we get, there's a dead body, they were killed and stabbed, and you have to figure out who did it and in what circumstances. Here, we had a dead body, but we didn't know, was it an accident? Is there only one thing going on? What's the motivation? Who killed them? We didn't even know how that she was killed. So that was very entertaining right up until the end. And even in the end, there's some complaints here about AJ, how realistic is that he would kill her. But in the end, in fairness, however cartoonish you want to call it, at the end, we were like, wait a minute, how could he obviously didn't just stumble on her and she found out he was stealing information, because how do you explain that with him plotting the station to be destroyed? But then in the end, there was an answer that was reasonable. He's still in the cartoonish realm, but he said basically, I wasn't trying to destroy the station. I didn't have this advanced knowledge of how to do the batteries. I just figured out that this would cause a problem, and that's all I cared about because I wanted to get the laptop. It was believable enough. So I think almost everything here is great. And I do think it really needs to be said that this system of asking questions of what evidence proves something is done as well here as anywhere else, and it is a great idea. It is much better than, first of all, it's miles better than Hunt a Killer, basically saying, figure out who you think did it, and then open the envelope and we'll tell you. This one, which can correct you when you get it wrong, is much better, and giving the full list of items of evidence to choose from, picking two, is a great idea for how these mystery games should unlock. Not only do you have to answer a question, but you have to prove what does it. Now, and then it had follow-up questions that were actually good. So it went beyond that. It said like, okay, you've identified the two items, but now why? And that was good. I guess, yeah, okay. So these are all wonderful, great things about it. Now, as far as criticism, I think there are some points of criticism here. One of them, I'm not sure I would call it a criticism or a negative, but one observation is that it's a little odd that it's being staged in a way that the questions for us to answer are sort of telling us information rather than us figuring out. It's like our second objective was prove that the oxygen, that the fire abatement system didn't kill her. And it's a little odd because you might say, well, shouldn't we first conclude that? Like, wouldn't it be better if it first asked us, was she killed by the fire thing, and we figure out that she wasn't, and then it says, okay, how do you prove that? So it's a little odd that it's telling us, I have concluded this. But it did, in this case, because we were so involved with the guy running the investigation, Solomon, it didn't feel that bad, that didn't feel that wrong that he would have figured some stuff out. The crux of my real complaints there was that one piece of that one question, part 2, that asked us to prove that she wasn't killed by the fire suppression. And I do think, in fairness, there was a little bit of a misfire there. And I think, part of what's odd is that the first puzzle in the game, the first objective, feels super easy. It's like you just have to spot that those 2 printouts are different and they're readable enough. And then the same can be true about part 3. Part 3 is even clearer, right? Like we listen to the audio, she says guest home, and then immediately we realize, hey, the guest home is AJ. We have no other evidence against AJ. It's a total twist. Just that the final thing, a little twist, implicates AJ, and that audio is that mention of guest house is the 100% proof that it's AJ. So no lead up, no connecting the dots, and once we discover it's AJ, nothing else makes sense. Like in an ideal case, you want to be like, oh, once you realize it, you go, oh, now I can look back at what he said here and what he did here, and this little inconsistency, now it all makes sense. But that's not the case here. So this is far from ideal to be like, at the very last moment, the last 5 minutes of the thing, we get told it's AJ because she says guest house and that's it. Case closed. That's odd. But it's not just that it's odd. It's just that that's super easy. And objective 1 was super easy. And then right in the middle was this question that we got stuck on for hours. Now, obviously, not all groups got stuck on this for hours. And I think, what proportion of the blame is totally us and what proportion do I want to put on the game designers? And I think, we can take the bulk of the fault there. Like, we can take 80% of the blame because the channel did figure out right up front that this was a plausible way to say the proof. And in the end, the part that really gets me is someone in the chat said, hey, the box has a number. Can we find that number in the lab? Because our intuition was this picture is going to prove it, and we should find the mice in that lab. And we could not do it because the text was so small. But that was fair. If we had been smarter, stuck to our guns, and said the box has a number, can we find that number? Then we would have found it. But I really wish they had done a better job with that puzzle, especially if the goal is not to make this a super hard case, because objectives 1 and 3 suggest that the goal wasn't to make it a super, super hard case. And when you have many small points of failure, many small points of permutations, then you run into trouble. And that's what happened to us here. Because logically, we felt like it shouldn't be in the lab. The mice should be in his room. And we felt logically that text was too small to be significant. Just as a sort of gentleman's handshake, normally you make text not so small that it's impossible to see. And the game seemed to be very clearly telling us from a game perspective that the whole hub got sucked out of oxygen. And sort of from a fairness standpoint, when you write a case like this, you should basically take care when to say things are people's opinions and when the game tells you something. Like if everything is up for grabs, if nothing you read can be trusted, then you're sort of on shaky ground. But here, the log was great. It was like, he says, the oxygen gets removed from all rooms with smoke. And when we read that, we're like, aha, okay, so the lab didn't lose oxygen. We looked at her socks were white, no smoke there, whatever. But then the game seemed to, in multiple places, seem to be saying, trust me, the oxygen got removed from everywhere. Even our guy was like, the whole place was sucked of oxygen, but she was dead before that. And those little nudges suggested to us that the whole place was sucked out of oxygen, and they could have done a better job at keeping that a little ambiguous. If they had kept that, if they just hadn't said that other stuff, if they had just kept with the smoke or repeated the smoke once and not given us reason to trust that the oxygen was removed from everywhere, we would have assumed that the oxygen wasn't necessarily removed from the lab. Or if the mice were more clearly in the lab, then we would have been able to do that. But it's a very good idea for a puzzle to conclude that the mice weren't dead. I just wish that that hadn't been so hard or so obscure, or there wasn't so many hints that the oxygen was removed from everywhere. And then the capper on that all was this inexcusable thing where we couldn't even select the right thing on the website. The website list of evidence was very poorly done for that one piece of evidence. And when you add all those little things up, it leads to frustration. So, but it's clear not everyone is going to get stuck the way most of us got stuck. And maybe most people are going to see that and just say, the mice are probably in the lab and the mice are alive, therefore that happened. Okay, the bug on the dock list was an issue, except that most teams don't see it. This team is too advanced, so we notice. Well, it is true, like advanced or not, there are certain places where we get stuck because we see a problem and we don't allow ourselves to guess. And maybe if we had just gone with our first guess first, we wouldn't have done that. One of the problems is we did not have access to the postmortem. Otherwise, we would have known that she was strangled, not simply suffocated. I think that was reasonable. I think that was reasonable. Anna says, they skipped a step after question 1. We shouldn't have been the ones to say the oxygen didn't kill her. We should have been the ones to say the oxygen didn't kill her. Obviously didn't know she was strangled, so postmortem wasn't concluding she was strangled. Otherwise, that's fine. And people make mistakes. Labs, autopsies, there are mistakes. So I don't fault that. It did tell us that he put her in a rear naked choke, so she might not have the strangulation marks, etc. So, but Melson says, yeah, but that was the twist, believing the air was removed in the entire sector when it was not. I mean, like any one of those things we would have gone past. We would have gone past the website missing the evidence. We would have gone past the various places telling us the oxygen was removed from everywhere if we had seen the numbers. But when we didn't see the numbers, which is our fault, and my fault really more than the channel, since I didn't zoom in on it enough, that's a lesson for us to learn. But little mistakes added up. I mean, we still guessed right. We still figured out enough that this was probably what was going on. But I do think that one little middle puzzle was calibrated very differently than the other two. And that's sometimes a little bit of a problem. Like occasionally you get a game where like most of the puzzles are easy, but one is super hard. That's problematic because, you know, what group do you give it to? Fortunately, in this case, the narrative is so good that even if you missed that puzzle, now, what if you had needed help? The game presumably would have given us some good help, right? Like this mobile stuff is just the worst. So, but if you had gone to, if you had gone to one of these pages, you just can't go back, huh? Okay. All right. Anyway, if you had needed help, okay, there you go. Let's say you got to this fire suppression system and we needed help. All right. So you click 2 and it says there are errors. All right. So let's pick 2 random ones. Okay. Neither of those are documents. Do you want a hint? Okay. Click here for it. Let's see. Where were Kurt's mice during the blackout? Need another hint. You'll need his mission assignment to locate the mice. Okay, so it really was the box number. Want another hint? Yes. Have you tried looking at the photo of Sandra in the lab upside down? All right, so a full set of hints for each thing. Very well done, easy to get at. Anna says, it was a great experience playing with this group. Tense moments and generous narrative. Thanks, everyone. Okay. So I appreciate that. So I think we've got a real winner here and a real surprise from Unsolved Case Files. And I think we need to play more of these. And we need to take them more seriously and maybe get on the better wavelength with these games in terms of not trusting the people who tell us things. But there were lots of details. I think if you were looking for other criticism, you could say that it's not the best deductive experience, right? We had basically 3 questions. The third one, we just paid attention to one word she said and had to remember. There was a lot of having to remember where certain information was given. But there wasn't that much of connecting dots. Like that AJ was the criminal, there were no dots to connect. The middle one had the most of it. And the first one, there were no dots to connect either. It was just spotting the differences. So not the best in terms of the scope of cold case games like Cryptic Killers, where you're like, oh, put this together with this, and now I see this critical piece of evidence. But still a very good experience, and I'm very curious to try more of the Unsolved Case Files games now. I have a couple more, but now I think we'll get our hands on the rest of them I don't have. There might be 3 or 4 that I don't have. I am curious to play them all now. Nelson says, Harmony Ashcroft did have a similar puzzle where we needed to spot a license plate in a picture. I guess this is usual in Unsolved Case Files. Well, now we will take more seriously looking for small print in pictures, and I will bring out the magnifying glass. But really, shame on us for not, when that box number was spotted, that was a very good observation that was made, and we did not, at that point, we were on tilt. So if we had spotted that box number earlier, maybe we would have looked more carefully for the box number. But then it was even upside down. They really made that tricky. Well, I really loved, look, the truth is, the really secret truth is that if we had done this, if all of this had been easy to us, we would have missed out on some of the more enjoyable struggles and debates and discussions we had. I mean, we really went deep into this one to try to find the proof of the things that we intuited were going on. We weren't entirely successful, but we got a little practice and we had lots of interesting discussion. And that's the best part here. Well, I couldn't have done it with that. I say that often. It's not always true. It's definitely true in this case that I could not have done this without you all helping me. It was fun to work on it together. All right, well, I hope you can join me for the next Unsolved Case Files. Let's figure out which one we want to play next. There's one set in the 40s or 50s. There's a bunch of them. So go have a look. Thanks to the Patreon supporters of this channel. Some of you may be watching and joining me here. We can buy more of them and play them on the channel. Look forward to it. Tomorrow we'll be reading The Last Letter from Dear Holmes. I'll see you next time.